Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Hondo Carpenter. I'm also your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI. And we're going to get right to it. We're going to be talking NFL draft, Elandon Roberts, and so much more. So let's get right to the first question. It comes to us from Stephen P. And Stephen P. lives in Pennsylvania. Stephen P. says, Hondo, I'm a huge Raider fan living in the Steel and as you call them, the Steelmen country of Pittsburgh. Could you talk about Elandon Roberts, what he brings to the Raiders, and what you think of him? Well, I could, Stephen, but I could also do this. I could bring in the man that my wife and I call our fifth son. He is our Raiders beat writer on SI covering Pittsburgh Steelers and my buddy. Again, my wife Shannon adores him, calls him our fifth son. Noah Strackbein. Noah, from the Steel City. How you doing, Noah?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here. I think my wife refers to you as my second dad, so I think it goes both ways.
Oh,
But I'm pumped.
we love Jillian, and
Yes.
so what a great wife. So first of all, thanks for joining us. And Noah's been on before. We love Noah, great journalist, one of our top SI journalists, and a great person. Noah, I hated to see Spillane go for a couple of reasons. I've been friends with him for many years back when he was in college. But he did a tremendous job with the Raiders. The problem is every year changing general managers, nobody got to see enough to extend him early. He got the free agency and the money was huge. I mean, he got
Mm.
11 mil a year for 3 years, huge money. So glad for him. But the Raiders go get Elandon Roberts. Now, here are some things that NFL people have told me about him. Physical specimen, plays the game physical. A bully physically, meaning on the off the field, he's a wonderful guy, but on the field, he's a bully. One GM said to me, I'm showing my age here, but he plays tough like Jack Lambert.
Oh.
So here is the question. If those are true, and I believe the men who told me, and I know how optimistic they are in the Raiders building, how do the Steelers let him get away? Because we heard the same thing about Spillane, and he came here and did nothing but play great. How did this happen, and what are your thoughts of him as a man, a player, and all of that?
Yeah, I think the difference between him and when Spillane left was when Spillane left, the Steelers were just looking for change. They realized they were in a weird spot defensively. They just kind of looked at it as clean house. We'll start over and we'll move on. And Spillane was part of that. E-Rob is more of a it's overcrowded. The inside linebacker room has Cole Holcomb coming back from an injury, Peyton Wilson, who they just drafted last year in the third round, Patrick Queen, who they just signed to a 3-year deal last offseason. They're looking at it going, E-Rob would be fantastic here. I believe this was more mutual. I believe the departure was Elandon wanted to stay in Pittsburgh. The Steelers wanted him to stay in Pittsburgh. It wasn't like he went and signed some ridiculous financial deal in Vegas. They could have made that work, but for Elandon, he gets a much bigger opportunity. And while even if he did start in Pittsburgh, he's splitting reps between 4 people. And in Vegas, he's not going to have to do that. Or wherever else he would have signed, he wouldn't have had to do that. Right. And I think that's what it comes down to is the Steelers were overcrowded. Elandon wanted a bigger opportunity. And because of that, it was more mutual to say, you know, you deserve that opportunity. We're going to give it to you, and we'll figure it out on our side for the Steelers.
Now, I've been told, and in the interest of fair disclosure, and you know who I talked to, he would have been a starter this coming year.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like they were throwing away a guy on the downward side. He would have been a starter. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. He's an all-around linebacker. Like he's a guy. I still remember the day at training camp that he came up to me. He was, you know, joking with me, a couple other writers, and he looks at me, he said, "This guy called me a glorified backup." He said, "I ain't a backup." And I was like, No, I didn't mean it like that. And that's exactly what like he's a guy who has come such a long way and always been the same player, consistent, reliable. And that is who you want as an inside linebacker. He's a starter. 2 years ago, the Steelers lost everybody. They had two starting linebackers go down. They were picking up guys off the street in the middle of the season to come in here and start. Erob was the only guy who was healthy all year long. And even when he wasn't, he was their reliable starter. And he did things that, like, he played better at times than I've seen anybody play at inside linebacker. And the Steelers have had names like Ryan Shazier, and Devin Bush when he was good before the ACL injury, and Vince Williams. Elandon Roberts he is a starter. Like, he's a starter quality player. He could do anything you ask him to do.
All right, so I got to ask you this one. I was told he is a bully on the football field and the guy you want your daughter to marry off of it. Just a fun, loving, sweet guy that everybody loves until you get on the field. You got to break this down for me, brother.
Yeah, he really is. He really is. Last year he showed up, and that's the thing, is he, like, off the field, he wants to be like that big, scary, mean bully, but you could tell he's just a giant teddy bear. A giant teddy bear that would if he had to, he'd put you through a wall. But he's a big teddy bear, and it's awesome because he's that bully on the field. He's the dude that'll talk smack. He's the dude that'll get in your face. He's the dude that'll hit you harder than anybody. I mean, you could go back to last year against was it Dallas? I think it was Dallas, where he hit someone so hard at the goal line that the ball went so far out of their hands that even he had no idea where it went. Like, everybody was just looking around going, there's no way somebody hit somebody that hard. That's who Elandon Roberts is. And then off the field, he's the nicest dude. Like, he'll joke with you. He wants to build relationships. He takes care of the people who take care of him. Like, he's a giant teddy bear off the field. I've never heard a bad thing about him. I personally, like, he was one of few players this offseason, and the Steelers lost a bunch of them, but there's always those select few that leave that you're like, man, I'm glad that you win. I'm glad that you got the opportunity. I'm bummed that I don't get to hang out with you every day. He was one of them. That's who Erob is. Erob's a good dude. He's a great teammate, and on the field, he will punish you. Like, he will be the scariest guy on the football field for 60 minutes. Like, no questions asked. There's not even a competition.
So I was told by someone inside the organization of the Steelers that everybody was disappointed to see him go,
Yeah.
including the fans were mad. And but they just said that's kind of who we are. We draft well, so we let guys go, and it's cheaper to have those. And they go, it's just a matter of who we are, like it was with Spillane. But they said inside the building, inside the locker room, and among the fans, nobody wanted Erob to go. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. He was the guy, the staple. Everybody viewed him as, look, at the Steelers went out and signed Patrick Queen, who at the time was an all-pro coming from Baltimore. He was the biggest name on the free agency market. And if you polled the fans, I think a majority of them would have said, I want to keep Elandon Roberts, because Patrick Queen's a phenomenal football player, but Elandon Roberts was a Steeler. Like, just like he is a Raider. The Raider Nation and the Las Vegas Raiders have that same grit, that same, blue collar, bust your butt, we are going to go out there and hit somebody mentality. That's who Elandon Roberts is. That's why everybody loved him, because it didn't matter if there were any limitations. This dude was going to put everything he had on the field. We watched him put everything he had on the field. There were times where I'm not like, and maybe I think it's surpassed enough where he doesn't care about this, but there were times where you would walk into a locker room and he couldn't stand. Like, I'm not joking. He couldn't stand up. And if he did, he was barely moving. And you'd go up to him and be like, you playing on Sunday? And he'd just look at you and smile and walk away. And you're like, all right, that's all I need to know. And that's why everybody loved him, is because he was the definition of a Steeler, and the Raiders, I think, are the closest thing you'll get to a Steeler. So he's going to fit in perfectly there.
Yeah, I got to tell you, some of these guys are just warriors, man.
Oh yeah.
Ernie Sims was the number one recruit in the country, went to Florida State, and the Lions selected him in the first round of the NFL draft. And I remember going into his locker room after a game, and he said to me, "Hey, Hondo." I go, "Yeah." And he goes, can you help me put my pants on? He couldn't put his pants on.
Yeah.
Literally couldn't put it. So I mean, I'm down there like with Dexter, helping him put his britches on and pulling him up and helping him. He just couldn't do it. I mean, people do not understand the violence of this game. I don't care
Oh,
what it looks like on TV. You and I are standing there on the sidelines. They don't get it, do they?
no, I mean, I remember Ben's last 2, 3 seasons. Like, there were times on a Friday where, like, you're already a week removed from this game where he still couldn't tie his own shoes. Like, he was having guys come and tie their shoes, just like your story with the pant. Like, these guys, it's people describe it as getting hit by a truck. Like, I think it's getting hit by a tractor trailer and squished between a train. Like, that's what it is every single Sunday. And by the end of the season, it's worse. That's just they are warriors. It's anybody who ever says. I mean, I joke all the time. Like, me and my wife will talk about, like, hey, I'm gonna make my kid a golfer. Money's in golf. And she's like, what about football? I'm like, come hang out in a locker room for 24 hours and tell me that you want our kid to look like that one day. And you'll be like, nah, I think I'll pass. They are warriors, man. It's crazy.
Well, there is one advantage to Dexter with adoption. He's not going to get dad's size, so I think he may be a golfer.
That is very true. If it wasn't, he would be left tackle for the somebody at some point. Instead, golf. Hey, you send him to Uncle Noah. I got it. Don't even worry about it. We could golf all day. I'll figure it out.
We'll do it for sure. Hey, we owe you another Korean barbecue.
I'm down. I'm down. This time I'm bringing Jillian.
You better.
We'll
And
yeah.
Shannon told me to tell you she loves you and she wishes she was here to give you another hug. So thanks for
Hey,
joining us, brother.
hey, thanks
That is
guys.
my
Appreciate you
guy.
always.
Now, hey, Noah, before you go, can you tell everybody where they can find you on social media?
Yeah. At Noah Strackbein on Twitter and on Instagram. And then you can check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk Monday through Friday. We're always rocking there. So
Check him out. He's the best. Noah Strackbein. Love the guy. Tell Jillian hi and tell your parents hi.
we'll do. Same with Shannon.
All
Take
right,
care, guys.
bye, buddy. That is my very good friend, the one and only, the great Noah Strackbein. Does a terrific job covering Pittsburgh. So there you go. There's an answer to your question. Could have given you my opinion, but it doesn't matter. The next one comes to us from Christian C. Hi, Hondo. I'm a former journalist in Lansing and a big fan of your podcast. I've even gotten my wife on board. Love the stories about your family. Thank you so much. One question, it seems like the Raiders still have a lot of holes to address. Do you think if they end up drafting an offensive player with the first two picks, excuse me, do you think if they end up drafting an offensive player in the first two picks in the draft, they will punt on a position group, linebacker or corner in the draft, and really wait until next year to address it? Okay, God bless Sparty. Uh, that's right. God bless the Spartans. Okay, so a couple of things here, uh, Christian, that I think are really important to talk about. There are a lot of holes on this Raider team, but you have to understand there's still free agents available that fit roles. There's a draft coming up where they have multiple picks. Then you can go back and see what you didn't address in the draft, and there are still free agents. Then there are guys because of trade that are going to become available. I think you're going to see the Raiders be a team that utilizes trade a lot. And then, of course, there's guys who get cut when the rosters go down. So I think there are a lot of guys. I think if you took today's roster and the roster they start the season with, I wouldn't be shocked if there's double digits of guys that make the 53 man coming out of training camp that aren't even on the team yet. So I don't know that I would say punt. I would tell you this. Um, the Raiders need a Mostert is not a RB1 in my opinion anymore. Maybe it was a change of scenery. We'll bring that back. I don't think they've seen enough from Sincere or Zamir to say that they aren't but I don't think they've seen enough to say that they are. Maybe that's a little unfair to Zamir. I mean to Sincere, but you know, I find it very difficult if they have the sixth pick to believe that they're going to take Gene T. I think he very well is worth it, but I think what Mostert did and what Gino did is bought them a little room to really use that six pick for a BPA. We'll get into more of that later. Best player available. I think there are probably four guys that they would be thrilled to get at six. And I think there are some guys at six that they would probably rather trade back and try to get. Um, but I think there's maybe, well, I know Abdul. Uh, I think they'd be thrilled with a Mason. Yeah, I think four is probably the right number. So we'll see. I don't think that they'll necessarily punt on anything till next year. They are open and willing to upgrade every single position, whether it be through draft, free agent, or trade. It's just got to work. So I think your question is a little too narrow as a former journalist. Let me broaden it a little bit. I could see them punting till next year on just about any position now. However, I could see them at I just told you at just about any position. At any position, I could see them upgrading too. I think it's all a matter of what's available. And I hope that answers your question, Christian, and make sure you tell your wife hello for me. The next one comes to us um, from Robert N. Hondo. Last year, you had heard that the top four teams were not trading. What are you hearing this year, Robert N? I am hearing Tennessee is a seller at their one pick. However, they're not willing to sell it for nothing. They're willing to trade. I don't think they're going to be way over outlandish. I think you're going to have to overpay some. But if you think a guy is a franchise guy, that's not overpaying. But I have heard from multiple people Tennessee is a seller. There's a couple of beliefs that there's a couple more that may, and there's a couple that are not. I think the Raiders would absolutely sell in a heartbeat for the right price. So I think of those top six, I think the Raiders and Tennessee would. Well, let me rephrase it. I don't think that's 100% accurate what I just said. Tennessee, I believe, wants to get rid of the pick. I think it's indicative of this quarterback class. Cam Ward is clearly the best. There's only one guy that consensusly I can hear from people that I trust as quarterback drafters that they have a first round grade on. That's Jackson Dart. And he has a low first round grade. Um, and I was told by a couple of executives I talked to yesterday, neither one looking for a quarterback, but both are people that I trust. They think if JJ McCarthy was in this year's draft, he would be the clear number one pick. Clear number one. And not even close. I said, so you're telling me you think he would be clear over Cam Ward? And the gentleman said to me, without a doubt. So that kind of gives you an idea. I think there is a lot of people that are concerned. And I'll get into this a little bit more later. I think there are a lot of people concerned because what happens is this: NFL fans look at where a person is picked. They don't take into account the team that drafted them. They don't take into account why the team drafted them, and they don't take into account where they should have been drafted. So I'm going to use a great example. Several years ago, the Raiders reached and took Cleve Farrell very early, way earlier than he should have been picked. Okay, that wasn't Cleve's fault. So Raider fans just decimated him, and he ended up leaving and playing very well in other places. it wasn't Clee's fault of where the Raiders picked him. It was in just another example of really poor drafting by the Raiders. But that wasn't his fault. And then there's the development of the guy. So, Cleve Farrell was a big check mark when Mark Davis is looking around the league at his team and what do I do? They had to look at that. We're just a bad drafting team. I think there are a lot of people that think that um, uh, that Cam is the best one in this class, but he's not a dude. He's got some question marks. And so when you pick a guy number one, your fan base doesn't rationalize, okay, we're taking him one because somebody has to go one, but he's not a dude. Now, I have talked with multiple teams that I trust and said, if you're doing this, who are you taking? Abdul Carter. I talked with a guy yesterday. I said, if you're Tennessee, who are you taking? Abdul Carter. I asked him, if you're Tennessee, what do you do? He said, I am going to take Abdul Carter. He said, but the problem is your fan base is going to erupt and be angry. And you're going to probably have to deal with ownership who then responds to an angry fan base. This is why the Raiders are in such a good spot right now with Tom Brady and Mark Davis, because I think they understand, okay, we're going to weather the fans. That has not always been the case here. And there have been times where the fan base got the organization to do some things. And I think it's hurt the Raiders. I think it's generally hurt the Raiders. I think now you're going to see a little bit more chin, a little bit more. No, we're going to stay our line. But in Tennessee, I don't think that's the case. So I have absolutely heard Tennessee would love to move. This next one comes to us. Um, uh, from Brian, age 11, from Ventura, California. Mr. Uncle Hondo, my name is Brian. I'm 11. I love the Raiders. You taught us about signing your players early so you do not have to pay more. You said that the Bengals and Cowboys were going to get punished for waiting because of Max, and the Raiders paid more because of Max, and that the Raiders paid more for Max than they would have had to have done if they had done a deal earlier, but he would look cheap by the end of the season. Is that new deal for Jamar Chase and what they're saying is coming for Trey Hendrickson of the Bengals what you meant? Thank you, Brian, age 11, Ventura, California. I like it when you tell stories about your dad. He sounds really sick. He's not sick. He's already passed away, buddy. But so he's not sick. I'm sorry that I made you think he was ill. He's gone. He's been gone for uh, in just a few weeks. It'll be 11 years. So you make sure you love and treasure your daddy, okay? And enjoy every minute of it. I appreciate you. Yes, that is exactly what I was talking about. They paid Jamar Chase now than Max Crosby, which is the Bengals are the Bengals. Then they go and pay Trey Hendrickson, which they haven't. It's been not been announced as far as this taping, but it's going to be more than Max. So now there are, I think, 4 players, non-quarterbacks, paid more than Max. What a great deal for the Raiders. But what if they'd done it last year? Think about that one. But yes, thank you for listening. I appreciate you, Brian. The next one comes from Gabrielle A. Thank you for all you do. I've known your name for over a decade. For this draft, we need to improve both lines. Adding a starting guard and a DT could elevate the impact of our other picks. The Eagles showed that controlling the line of scrimmage wins games. How critical is drafting for need versus BPA? Last year, Penix filled a need, but Bowers was a blue chip player available to us. Gabrielle A. Great question here. So let me just say a couple of things. I don't, you say the Raiders need a guard. So Jordan Meredith is extremely solid, one of the best in the league. I'm big on him. I think Dylan Parham is still very good, but that's where you see Jared Wilson. Every one of my mock drafts, I have the Raiders taking him in the fifth round. I agree. I think they need a guard, but I think there's plenty of really Jared Wilson. I think could come in and compete instantaneously. Matter of fact, let me just grab a little quick note here. Yeah, Jared. I think Jared Wilson could come in. I think you could get him in the fifth round, and I think Jordan is really good, and I think that Dylan is really good, and I think he could compete with either one. Either one. Now, Delmar DJ Glaze, the mule, played lights out for a rookie last year. For a rookie. Thayer Mumford was injured. That's why he got his shot, was never really 100%. So he didn't play well, but you have to take into account injury. I think the Raiders could absolutely use a stud, elite offensive tackle if one is there. And just because you have to continue to build the lines. That's why in one of my mock drafts, I had him taking Will Campbell. I know that they really liked him. So, but again, I think right now you got Colton Miller and Delmar DJ Glaze, the mule, as your starting tackles. And I think that you feel pretty good about that. I think football people do. I don't know that Raider fans do. I think you go into with JPJ at center, Dylan Parham and Jordan Meredith as your starting guards. I think that's a pretty good offensive line. In fact, we did a story the other day where Pat McAfee talked about he thinks the Raiders' offensive line is underrated. I agree with Pat. I don't think it's deep, and they have to address it. It's why you go get a Jared Wilson. I think if you've got a chance to land a really good tackle, you take it. But yes, I agree. You win on the line of scrimmage. If I was a general manager, unless I was a player away, I would probably, unless none of them were of value, take only lines in the first round, offensive, defensive line, unless there was no player available when I picked worthy of that spot. Then I take the best player available. But yes, I agree with you. It's BPA. Best player available is how you build a football team. You don't pick for need. You pick best player available. And now you hope that the two crisscross. But if they don't, they don't. And BPA is how the best teams do it unless they're a player away. Good one there, Gabrielle. Next one comes from Kenny M. Hondo, my name is Kenny McDowell from Flatwoods, Kentucky. I don't know where Flatwoods is, but I enjoy Kentucky. It says, you said earlier that some NFL executives told you they felt the Raiders' injury was because of strength and conditioning staff. Have the Raiders made changes in this area? Nothing that's public as of now. Next comes to us from Matt S. in Sacramento, California. Matt says, hey, Hondo, I listen to your every exclusive and full podcast. Do you think Tom Brady will be in the war room on draft night? Also, how much money does a team need to save for the rookie contracts? I heard you say that you don't give your opinion because it doesn't matter, but I think it matters to a ton. We all listen to you every day and would love to hear your opinion on this. Thanks for the Raider content, Matt S. in Sacramento. Here's what I believe. I don't know that a decision's been made about Tom being in or not being in the war room, just because obviously he's still a dad with kids and all of that. Also, I think the Raiders want to, even though Tom is 100% involved, I think optic wise, they prefer to keep him out of the spotlight. And sometimes there are cameras in the war room and whatever. So I would say to you, I've not heard a decision, yay or nay, if he'll be in there. He's certainly going to be massively involved. But I would guess based on how they've handled it so far, they will probably try to minimize the exposure of how involved he is. But we'll see. But it is what it is. Next comes to us from KDF in Springfield, Missouri. Hondo, I greatly appreciate your podcast. And on your last podcast, you had the Raiders taking Jalen Milroe, the Alabama quarterback, in the third round. You also said that as many as 6 QBs could go in the first round. Do you think he will be there? KDE in Springfield, Missouri. So, Katie, this is a great question that I really appreciate. So, by the way, I love Bass Pro Shops there. Great place. Let me just say this to you, a couple of things. I have said multiple times that the best drafting executives that I talk to continually laugh at how bad NFL teams draft. And that based upon the track record, as many as 6 could go. I've also told you, though, none of the men that I talk to believe that there are 6 quarterbacks worthy of being picked in the first round. They just think there's that many bad drafting teams. So let me tell you how I put a mock draft together, and then this will help answer your question. I think there is a chance Jalen Milroe would be there in the third round. A chance. Probably not, however. If I had to give percentage, I would say over 50% that he's not. He's a really good quarterback that needs to be developed. But he's also a very good quarterback, very good, who could be really good in the NFL. He could be really, really good. The problem is when I put together a mock draft, I ask 5 men who don't represent the 5 teams ahead of the Raiders to give me their opinion based on what they're hearing of the first 5 picks. Now let me explain. So let's say an executive from team X gives me his top 5 and he has Abdul Carter as number 1. So I give that player 5 points because he was picked number 1, and his 5th player gets 1 point. Then I go through and I take my 5 guys and I give points to all their players and I add all the points together. The highest point person is who I put at number 1. Second highest is who I put at number 2 or 3 or 4, whatever. And then I just know I take those 5 guys off the board. And then I ask them, if these 5 guys are off the board, who do you pick if you represent the Raiders? And then I do the same way. Highest point person is who I use in my mock. Now, please stay with me for a moment. I know this is kind of lengthy. Then when I'm doing my second and third round, I'm asking these guys, who's a guy that you have projected in the second round that you really think fits what the Raiders need? And I do the same scoring and I go all the way through the 5th round. All of them have Jalen Milroe with a third round grade. All of them do that I use in my last mock draft. All 5 had Jalen with a third, but they had him with a high third value. Okay. So they thought he was well worth where the Raiders pick in the third round. And all said that's where we would take him. So that's why he's there. Do I think there's a chance he's not there? I do. I do. But I wanted to answer your question. All right. Next, Carl R. Hondo, do you think about good teams? You talk about good teams extending early. Who do you think is a current Raider? We aren't talking about getting an extension. Colton Miller. Now remember, he came back. He had missed a ton of time the year before. He came back and was getting game shape and game health. People do not understand, and I don't blame them. But your ability to run and your ability to lift and all that is not game shape. There is a difference. So when he came in early last year, Colton looked bad, and he would tell you that. I love Colton and one of my favorite Raiders on this team. Not even as just a player, just he is a salt of the earth human. Cap's a great guy. And in fact, my next email is about that, and I'll talk to you about it in a minute. But Cap's a great guy. And um, but once he hit, and I'm gonna guess it was game 5, may have been 4, but you saw Colton Miller, and after that, he was who the Raiders know he is. So I think absolutely the Raiders, and I would tell you that I believe, and I'm not guessing here because I've heard it, I believe the Raiders would like to extend him. Um, I would be shocked if it wasn't done by the start of the season, but I would even say probably before or in the midst of training camp. But I expect Colton Miller would be the next one. Hondo, do you know of a name that may shock some Raiders for one of the top 30 visit? That's some L. Anderson. Yeah, I do. They're bringing in Georgia linebacker Jalen Walker. I love this guy. Love this guy. Now, you may remember 2 years ago, after the Raiders 22 draft, you guys asked me, who do you think the Raiders will pick? And I did it in one of my question and answer articles. And I just said Brock Bowers. And it worked out. It wasn't because I was super smart. I did have information, but there was change in regime and all that. And it ended up being Brock. I was asked after last year, who do I pick? And I said Jalen Walker then. He's a stud. Absolute stud. All right. But he's coming in. That's a guy that's not getting a lot of talk. He's going to, though. He's going to. He does edge. He's a linebacker. He can just do a lot. He's a freak. Love that kid's game. Go just you want to do something fun. Maybe you're just sitting there and you're home from work for the day and the kids are in bed and maybe you look at your husband or you look at your wife and say, you want to do something romantic? Yeah. Bam, let's watch some Jalen Walker highlights. Getting to know you. Remember that old commercial on TV? Getting to know you. You watch that guy. Bam. I mean, he's just a brute force trauma. He delivers it, man. He is fun to. I love his highlights. I love them. Love them. And you put those things on. If you're this is one thing I adore about my wife is you know, she'll say to me, "You want to watch hunting videos or football highlights?" Yes, and she's beautiful. So, anyways, yeah, absolutely. Put some just go Google Jalen Walker highlights. You can thank me later. And but he's fun to watch, just like Elandon Roberts. Oof, he's fun. All right, the next one comes us from Reginald W. Hondo. If I remember correctly, when Tom Telesco took the Raiders job, you didn't know him, but several of your friends did. I know your respect was very high for him, and that by the time he left, you knew and liked him. Was there a moment when you knew you liked him that you could share? And have you communicated since he left? He really interested me, and I thought he did a terrific job. Great question, Reginald. Um, yes, I had several friends that knew him, and they all were like, Hondo, you and Tom are going to hit it off. And I was very thrilled to get to know Tom Telesco. I hold him in very, very high regard. Yes, we have communicated since he was let go. And I feel like I could pick up the phone at any moment, even though he's not there anymore, and call him and talk to him. And he is a salt of the earth man. If I owned an NFL franchise, if I bought an NFL franchise tomorrow, I would find a job for Tom Telesco. And I would find a job for Dave Ziegler. You just can't have enough good people in your organization. They are both tremendous men, a little bit different personality wise, but not different in a bad way. And they are both tremendous football minds, completely underrated, completely underrated. And you just can't have enough good people. But yeah, I will tell you a great story. So I won't get into because it was an off the record conversation. So I will in any way perpetuate Tom Telesco's comments, thoughts, reactions, or anything. I'll just tell you what Hondo did. I was told by people inside the Chargers organization, you may remember I shared this when he got the job, at how great of a job he had done. But the Chargers ownership had made some decisions that Tom probably didn't agree with. Um, and so when Tom left, the team was in salary cap hell. You may remember they had a terrible head coach. And I was told by people in that organization who I personally know, one of them I was fishing with relatively recently. Um, and so I had shared that publicly. Privately, I had made clear to Tom what I had learned, more significantly, more details and all of that. And all I will tell you is Tom never once, privately or publicly, on or off the record, ever threw the Chargers, their owners, anybody under the bus. And even though he knew I knew what I was talking about, I had some very specific things I can't share with you. Uh, he would just smile and say, I was general manager. It's completely my fault. And you know what? That's being a man. Those people gave you a paycheck. Years ago, one of my first jobs, I worked at an Arby's, and to this day, I can't eat them on my diet, but the Arby's beef and cheddar with extra cheddar is just awesome. Love them. If you haven't had one in a while, they're not a sponsor, but go get one. Thank me later. They're delicious. But get the extra cheddar. Anyways, on that onion bun. Ooh, all right. And I'll never forget, I came home and I was complaining about something. And my father looked at me and he said to me, how much do they pay you an hour? And I said, 3.35. That was the minimum wage back then. Maybe it was even 3.15. I think it was 3.35. Maybe it's 3.15, or maybe they raised it, but whatever. It was three something. And he goes, so when you get your paycheck, do they pay you what they owe you? And I said, yes, sir. He goes, then shut up. I don't want to hear you complain. They hired you for a price, they paid you for the price, and the check didn't bounce. Keep your mouth shut. Defend your company. If you don't like it, leave. But don't say another real word, at least not in my house. I don't want to hear it. Great lesson by my dad. And the greatest compliment I could give Tom Telesco is my father, if he were alive, would have loved him. Just a great guy. He knew football, tremendously respected around the NFL. You can't find a person in the NFL that does not respect Tom Telesco and his brain, and his football brain. Great father, great husband, great guy. And I'm proud to consider Tom Telesco a friend. And I'd do anything for him. So that's a great one. I appreciate that question. Um, uh, the next one comes to us from Mike W. in Texas. Hondo, this is Mike L. Oh, nope, this isn't our last one. The last two are both from a Mike. I apologize. Hondo, this is Mike L. from Rochester, New York. I have been a Raider fan since 1968, and this year will be the 20th year my son and I go to a Raiders game. Do you think that with the strength of the Raiders' defensive line, uh, will Patrick Graham try to put more pressure on the quarterback to help protect the young secondary? I enjoy your podcast every day. Keep up the good work. I'm going to tell you this, Mike. Mike L. from Rochester. Patrick Graham's desires to put pressure on the more pressure on the quarterback every single play of every single snap of every single down. Yes, 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 and yes. I got a couple more here. Okay, this one comes to us from uh, Max A. Max A says, Dear Mr. Carpenter, I have an interesting question for you. If there was one player in this draft that if you were the god of football, you would give the Raiders picking at 6, who would it be? Abdul Carter. Nothing else to talk about. Abdul Carter. Um, well, and you may ask why? Because as of this moment, I mean, he's the best player in this draft. And yes, you've got Malcolm, and yes, you've got Max Crosby. Yes, but you don't turn down adding those. Okay, the last one comes to us from Stephanie R. Stephanie R, who is from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Stephanie R says, Hondo, I am a massive Raider fan. Our family goes to at least 2 Raider games a year. We always try to do one road game, one home game. Because of the cost of Allegiant Stadium, this year we're going to do 2 road games. But I have a question for you. I love that you've taught us about dudes in the NFL draft. Could you tell us who are the dudes that you know of at this moment? Thank you, Stephanie. First of all, there's only one guy that is consistently being called a dude, and that is Abdul Carter. Now, I reserve the right for that to change. There are a lot of really good players. That Jalen Walker and I told you about, man, bam. He's fun. A lot of good stuff there. A lot of good stuff. But there are some question marks. Cam Ward, some question marks. Doesn't remember, not being a dude doesn't mean they're bad. Jaden Daniels wasn't a dude, and you have to wait till after 3 years to fully evaluate a player. But after year 1, he sure looked like it. But the concerns that people had, the way he plays, making him susceptible to injury because of his size, are all legit. So you wait till after 3 years, then you make that judgment. I think there's as many as 2, maybe 3 who could be defined as dudes before this is over. But let's wait for pro days and 30 visits. But right now, there's only one. That's Abdul Carter. All right. Last one, non-football. I'm doing one non-football related email every single podcast. So I'm telling all the critics so you can leave now. Who don't want non-football, this is it. This is your non-football. This one I just thought was so funny. You guys are going to love it. Dear Mr. Carpenter, my name is Timothy. I am not great at writing, so I ask you to forgive me. This is my dad's email account. I am in 5th grade. My family are all big Raider fans, and my dad and my grandpa watch your podcast, and I watch it with them. I think you're funny. Thank you. A lot of people don't. So I like you already, Timothy. We're buddies. Okay. It is hard for me because the Raiders are always losing. And he spells it losing, Loosing. Good job there, buddy. I love it. I'm not teasing you. I think it's cute. So it's are always losing. I have told my dad and my grandpa maybe I should pick a better team to root for them. My grandpa says that it is in our blood to be Raider fans. My dad said it's in our blood and it's grandpa's fault that we're Raider fans. I just think that's so cute. That is adorable. Grandpa said that we should ask you what I should do because I like you and I trust you. So, do you think it would be okay for me to go be a fan of another team? Buddy, now I need you to know I am coming at this completely unbiased. I'm not a fan. I love the game of okay. I love my family. I love the Lord. And I really enjoy football now. I really, really, really enjoy it. My wife would probably tell you that I love it, but I really enjoy it. You can't love something that's not alive. But I really enjoy it. But I'm going to tell you a great story. I grew up in a family that was devoted Michigan State fans. And it's just who we were. It was our DNA. My father grew up in Lansing, Michigan, and you know, ran a very successful business in Lansing, Michigan, and so it was part of the DNA. My earliest life memory, I have two. One was on a Saturday morning before a game, and one was at a Michigan State football game, sitting in Spartan Stadium. And there have been times, especially with football, not really with basketball, but with football, where they were really bad. but I never ever, and so all of my children are big Michigan State fans. And I'm going to tell you, when you become a fan of a team, it's more than just the team. Now, I want you to hear me here, little buddy, because I think this is important. You can absolutely go root for any team you want, but I want you to hear me on something, if you would. Your grandfather, one day, you're going to wake up and grandpa's not going to be here anymore. And one day you're going to wake up and your dad's not going to be here anymore. I know because I've experienced that. And so every time I walk in Spartan Stadium, which is not very much anymore because I cover the NFL, but when I do, I literally look at those seats we were sitting in with that first memory, and I remember my dad. Every time I wear a Michigan State shirt, I think about my dad. Every time I watch Michigan State play football or basketball or hockey, which I do a lot, I think of my dad. I think of his dad, who I didn't know. He died before me. And my grandfather's name was Ernest. That's where my son, Dexter Ernest Wayne, gets his name, Ernest, because it's more than just sports. Now, I have been to all 32 NFL stadiums, and many are very unique and special. You go to Lambeau Field, it's incredible. It's a great place. There are several places that you can go that are really incredible. The fan bases are all different, but I'm going to tell you something that I hope you hear me. And my family, specifically referring to um, my wife and children, are Raider fans. And there is something about Raider Nation fans that is incredible. Now, you may have seen the guy who does it. I mean, several people do, but one of them, Wayne Mabry, and they call him the Violator, that looks really mean. Okay, Wayne has become a great friend of mine. And I'm going to tell you something. In the black hole, there are people of every color. In the black hole are people of every political belief: Republican, Democrat, conservative, independent, liberal. In the black hole are people who are very, very wealthy and some who are very, very poor. But in the black hole on game day, and really every day, they are a family. And I'll tell you how much respect I have for those people. If I was going to a game and I can't take Dexter with me up in the press box, and let's say I had to have a babysitter for whatever reason, his mama wasn't available, I would, of course, buy him a ticket, but I would go to Wayne and say, "Can you keep him in the black hole?" And Wayne would. And I can tell you about a bunch of people in the black hole that would, and I would not even bother me. They are just salt of the earth people. If you get to go to a game, you got to go to Lache. Just go down and hang out with Raider people. And so what I would tell you is you absolutely can go root. That doesn't make you a bad guy. But take it from an old man, and I'm an old man. I'm 54 years old. You're going to appreciate one day, when they're no longer here, the tie that you have to something they cared about and you care about. And they'll never, and it'll be a piece of them that never leaves you. I was watching Michigan State play basketball over the weekend, and my dad just loved Michigan State football, basketball, and hockey. And huge Michigan State basketball fan. And I literally would text him with my family, "Oh, my, wouldn't dad have loved," or this, and it still keeps him top of mind. So I know that you're young, but sometimes that doesn't mean you're stupid. And sometimes we just need an older person to tell us. So you go root for whoever you want. But I'm going to tell you this: one day, if you keep rooting for the Raiders, when Grandpa isn't here anymore. And your dad's not here anymore. It'd be a tough day. My dad's been gone almost 11 years. And I would not wish him back here because he is absolutely in a better place and would not want to come back. But I get to see him again. But one day, when your grandpa and dad are gone, I don't know how old they are. If I'm alive, if I'm not, you'll think back to this and say, Uncle Hondo, thanks. Now, I emailed your dad because you gave me his email address, and I got a little present coming your way. Okay. It's something that you get to give your grandchildren. You'll see what I'm talking about. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for listening, everybody. God bless you. And I hope that you have a wonderful day. It's a Monday, man. Aren't we blessed to be alive on a Monday? God bless you.